Welcome to the 700 Club. It's getting closer and closer to the big day, but of course it's been the big day since Halloween. It seems like we've rushed Christmas, but it's coming. And now the big Christmas present that the Congress and the President gave us, big business bonuses, sign-up bonuses for employees, billions of dollars invested back into America. That's how companies like AT&T and Boeing are responding to President Trump's amazing tax cut and victory.
And millions of American workers will start to see more take-home pay early next year. It's all just a presidential signature away now that both houses of Congress passed tax reform. And as Abigail Robertson shows us, celebrations are already underway.
Republican lawmakers' spirits are high after they successfully handed President Trump his biggest legislative victory to date, overhauling the tax code.
Hasn't been done in 34 years, but actually really hasn't been done because we broke every record. It's the largest, I always say the most massive, but it's the largest tax cut in the history of our country, and reform, but tax cut.
After Wednesday's House approval, GOP lawmakers loaded into buses and headed to the White House for a tax reform victory party.
This is the kind of relief that Americans deserve. This is the kind of tax reform and tax cuts that get our economy growing to reach its potential.
Republicans like Congressman Robert Pittenger believe this bill will lead to historic economic growth.
I think it'll be transformational, much as it was in 1986 with the Reagan tax cuts. We saw enormous growth in jobs and as well as an increase in wages.
Many in the corporate world agree, like AT&T and Boeing, offering employee bonuses to celebrate the corporate tax rate falling from 35% to 21%. But Democrats argue only the rich will benefit, a claim with which Pittenger strongly disagrees.
The naysayers are always there. They were there with the Reagan cuts. At the time of the Reagan tax cuts, only 18% of the people believe they're getting a tax cut. Most of the rest of them believe they're getting a tax increase. That's the kind of misinformation that's out there in the marketplace.
Republicans believe Americans will see the benefits starting in February.
An average family who makes $70,000 a year, they're going to get about a $2,000 tax cut out of this directly back in their pocket.
The bill still needs President Trump's signature, and that might not happen until January. That's because any newly signed law that increases the deficit requires automatic spending cuts. Republicans hope to waive that rule before the end of the year. If not, Trump would sign it in 2018, which would give the GOP another year to figure out how to avoid the automatic cuts. Lawmakers also face a potential government shutdown if they don't quickly move to fund the government into next year. Republicans hope to reach a spending compromise by Friday, or their tax reform victory will be short-lived. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, if you want to see if you're getting a tax cut, head to cbnnews.com and check out a list of tax calculations. In other news, there's a word of a possible terror attack in Melbourne, Australia. Our John Jessup has more.
That is right, Pat. 19 people were injured when a driver plowed his vehicle directly into pedestrians in a busy commercial district. Gary Lane has more on this developing story.
It was 4:30 p.m. Thursday, Melbourne time. People were in the city's central shopping district doing some Christmas shopping. Suddenly, a white SUV seemed to come out of nowhere, plowing into pedestrians at a busy intersection. Some of the victims were seriously injured. Local media reported 13 victims were taken to hospitals, including a preschool-aged child with serious head injuries. Police are being cautious about whether it was an act of terror.
At this stage, we believe it's a deliberate act. Can I repeat that? At this stage, we believe it is a deliberate act. However, we do not know the motivation, and it is still early stages of the investigation.
Police say the driver is an Australian citizen of Afghan descent who has a known history of drug use and mental health issues. When the vehicle stopped, a crowd of people gathered around the driver, pulled him from the vehicle, and held him until police arrived. Later, authorities took a second man into custody.
Oh, now it's bloody horrific. Shocking and surprising that it's happened again. So I'm speechless.
Back in January, a driver intentionally killed 4 people in Melbourne, not far from this latest attack. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Well, President Trump issued a challenge for the United Nations ahead of the UN General Assembly vote against his decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. At his final cabinet meeting of the year, Mr. Trump delivered a word of warning to the UN and to countries that receive American aid.
They take hundreds of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars, and then they vote against us. Well, we're watching those votes. Let them vote against us. We'll save a lot. We don't care.
The United States sends the United Nations $8 billion a year, which is about 22% of the UN budget. Trump says the money America sends is mismanaged by a bloated bureaucracy that often votes against Israel and American interests. Meanwhile, faith was also on display at that cabinet meeting. The president asked Health and Human Services Secretary Ben Carson to lead a prayer for the cabinet.
In this time of discord, distrust, and dishonesty, we ask that you would give us a spirit of gratitude, compassion, and common sense, and give us the wisdom to be able to guide this great nation. In the future, we ask in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Well, the 2016 presidential election proved to be one of the biggest political upsets in American history. Now, a couple of members of Donald Trump's inner circle are pulling back the curtain in the book, Let Trump Be Trump. CBN's Jenna Browder met with former campaign manager Corey Lewandowski and brings us this story.
It's a rip-roaring tale from the campaign trail.
You know, it's one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had.
As told by former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski and former deputy campaign manager David Bossie.
And I equate my time with him as a jockey on a famous racehorse. You just have to let him run, and you put the blinders on him, you try and guide him into the corners a little bit. But a man like Donald Trump, I didn't want to change, and he didn't want to be changed. So Let Trump Be Trump is the inside story of the rise of him as a candidate and then right through the presidency.
The book is loaded with insider stories, one of the most interesting involving Paul Manafort, who they say did try to change the candidate.
We were coming back from Delaware, and we were taking the helicopter back, and this was right at the time in the campaign where Paul was trying to exert more influence on what he was going to do on a day-to-day basis. And he had gone to Florida, and he spoke to the Republican National Committee members, and to paraphrase, he said, I'm going to change Donald Trump. You're going to see a different Donald Trump moving forward. He's not going to be the freewheeling candidate that he was in the primary. He's going to be something different.
When Trump got wind of the plan, he had the pilot lower the helicopter so he could make a phone call.
And he just annihilated Paul, because he said, I don't want to change. I've been the same person I have been for 70 years. Don't try and change me.
Lewandowski also found out what it was like to be on the receiving end of Trump's temper.
Well, it's tough. It's tough. And I'll tell you, Mr. Trump, candidate Trump, but now President Trump, is a perfectionist. And he expects, demands, and deserves people to work as hard as he does.
President Trump, he has tremendous support with evangelicals. I'm wondering, you know, when you were on the campaign trail, were there any conversations between the two of you about how you would court this block of voters?
When you think about Iowa, a state that has a large evangelical population, when we started the campaign, all the pundits told us, don't try and win Iowa because those evangelicals will never support you, Mr. Trump. And who came out early for us? People like Jerry Falwell Jr. of Liberty University, the great Paula White, the Reverend Paula White. So many other pastors came and said, you want to judge a man and his faith? Look at his children.
Lewandowski told me how faith played a big part in the campaign, especially when a potential bombshell dropped.
Whether it was the Access Hollywood tape, right? That was the Billy Bush tape. We talked about it a lot in the book and the impact that that had. And those women who came forward who accused him of things, you had to look into your faith for that. And I called Jerry Falwell Jr. and I read about it in the book, Jerry, I've got to go on TV in 5 minutes. What do I do? And he said, Corey, my father, Jerry Falwell Sr., would always say, we're not voting for a Sunday school teacher. We're voting for the leader of the free world. And no man is perfect, but we have to look at it in the totality.
The whole campaign experience is one Lewandowski says he never would have dreamed of being a part of growing up.
And it was, look, I'm a guy from Lowell, Massachusetts who, you know, never had privilege, never had any money, never went to the best schools. But I developed a work ethic in that blue-collar town that helped me be successful of guiding an incredible candidate amongst the most amazing journey. And I had a front row seat of history, and now I get to call the President of the United States a friend.
In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Some interesting insights into that historic campaign. Pat, back to you.
Unbelievable. And it's amazing that Corey has stayed loyal to the president. The president is still a friend. He puts a lot of stake in loyalty, and he also likes smarts. He wants people who are competent. But this guy, if he keeps going, is going to go into history as one of the great presidents of the United States. He is a transformational president. And ladies and gentlemen, like it or not, the United States was going down a slippery slope into oblivion. We had a group in charge of this country that literally acted like they hated free enterprise and they hated America. And what was being done was nothing short of appalling. And the president has reversed that, and of course, he's dealing with a hidden group in his own administration who are doing everything they can to unseat him. And he's got to clean house on those things. That so-called deep state has got to go. He has to get some loyalists in there, and I think it's one of those things. He doesn't want to do it because it'll cost a lot of money and so forth, but on the strength of the huge win in this tax bill, I think he needs to get some people in place in the Justice Department and other places who are loyal to him and who at least embrace his agenda. And if he doesn't, he's going to get a lot of people who are continuously hammering at him. And he doesn't deserve it because he is doing just a fabulous job.
Do you think it's clear to him who the people are that need to go?
They know it. But, you know, his attorney general is, the idea that the attorney general will recuse himself of all these things, and he has, you know, he's recused of one thing, but he doesn't have to recuse himself of acting as the chief legal officer of the President of the United States. And they've got to clean house with the FBI. It's just appalling what's been, and those people are still in power. They need to get fired. I mean, those people who wrote those emails that, you know, we've got to stop him and how are we going to do it, and here are our plans. And we're going to Andy's office, and Andy is still like this #2 man in the FBI. They've got to get those guys out of there. I mean, it's just going to mean, I don't think the American people will object if he does what he needs to do, but the person who needs to do it is the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid Jeff Sessions is letting him down. So we hope for the best, but anyhow, he's riding high, and all I can do is salute Mr. President. You're doing a great job. All right.